We all think we know how reality TV contracts work. We watch the drama, the tears, and the million-dollar weddings, believing we're seeing real life unfold in front of millions. But what happens when the biggest wedding in reality TV history was nothing but an illusion? For 10 years, fans looked at Yandy Smith and Mendeecees Harris as the ultimate definition of ride or die.
I'm Mendeecees. I'm from Harlem, St. Nick Projects. I used to be in the streets, got it together, got in this music industry, and Yandy's my girlfriend.
Did you see all those gifts? How are we gonna get that stuff home?
Your father.
What you thought you was doing tonight?
Me and Vado going to Jewel's all-white party.
This is the night of your baby shower.
We watched Yandy stand by her man through a massive federal indictment, hold down the fort during his 4-year prison sentence, and welcome him home to build an empire. They had the ultimate love and hip-hop fairy tale, the white dress, the emotional vows, the hyphenated last name. But on Christmas Eve, Mendeecees sat in a radio studio, looked into the microphone, and dropped a bombshell that completely shattered a 20-year illusion. They were never legally married. Not in 2015, when millions watched them exchange vows on national television, and not in 2020, when he came home from federal prison. 20 years, 2 televised ceremonies, and 0 signatures on a marriage license. Immediately, the internet went into a frenzy. Was it all just a stunt for TV ratings? Or was there a much darker, calculated reason why Yandy Smith, a brilliant, Howard-educated business mind, refused to ever sign that paper?
We watched a full wedding. We thought they were married.
Absolutely.
And here we come to find out, oh, this was just for the show. So
No. It was not for the show, because we did set out to capture their real wedding. Mm-hmm. Right? And what happened after the fact, and honestly, I didn't even find out about it until everything came up. And Yandy and I were talking. I said, what the hell was that? And she said, well, I was advised by my legal, which is a real life thing.
The truth is, while Mendeecees thought his wife was protecting them from the courts, she was actually building an exit strategy that involved secret trips to London, emotional cheating confessions on camera, and a wild betrayal involving a close friend that finally forced Mendeecees to crash out in front of the cameras. Because behind the glamorous couple everyone wanted to be was a cold, 20-year business partnership, and when the illusion finally broke, the fallout was absolute chaos. To truly understand how a 20-year empire crumbled in a single radio interview, we have to rewind the tape all the way back to 2008. Long before the flashing lights of VH1, the red carpets, and the multi-million-dollar branding deals, Yandy Smith and Mendeecees Harris were just 2 hungry, ambitious hustlers trying to outrun the gravity of the streets in Harlem. Mendeecees was a street figure trying to pivot into the music industry, managing local talent and navigating a world where survival meant always keeping your cards close to your chest. Yandy, on the other hand, wasn't just another pretty face entering the hip-hop scene. She was a Howard University graduate with a sharp brain for business, a woman who had already managed massive artists and understood the cold, hard mechanics of contracts, percentages, and financial liabilities. When they met, the chemistry was instant. They were young, they were driven, and they looked like the next New York power couple in the making. By 2011, executives saw their raw, authentic dynamic and cast them on Love and Hip Hop, New York. Almost overnight, their relationship became public property. Millions watched them balance love, family, and the chaotic energy of the music business. But just as they were cementing their status as reality TV royalty, the ground beneath them opened up. In 2013, the federal government came knocking. Mendeecees was hit with a massive federal indictment. The charges? Conspiracy to distribute heavy illegal substances, a case brought forward by the Department of Justice that carried a mandatory minimum sentence that could put him away for over a decade. Suddenly, the flashy lifestyle, the expensive birthday parties, and the TV fame were overshadowed by the terrifying reality of federal prison. With a massive legal war hanging over their heads and the shadow of the prison cells growing longer every day, the couple made a choice that left the entire industry scratching their heads. Instead of pulling back from the cameras to deal with the crisis in private, they doubled down on the spectacle. In 2015, VH1 announced a massive, live, televised wedding special. It was hyped as the event of the season. The theme was pure luxury, white decor everywhere, tears flowing freely, heartfelt vows exchanged in front of millions of viewers at home. We watched Yandy walk down the aisle, look into Mendeecees' eyes, and promise to hold him down through whatever storm was coming. She officially changed her public name to Yandy Smith Harris. To the world, she was the ultimate ride-or-die woman, a loyal partner, locking her life to a man facing total ruin. But behind the scenes, far away from the camera operators and the weeping fans, a completely different script was being written. You see, a televised wedding requires production schedules, floral arrangements, and catering contracts. But a legal marriage requires a small, unassuming piece of paper issued by the city court, signed by both parties, and a legal witness. And as the couple drove away from their lavish reception, that piece of paper didn't exist. For years, fans speculated that the wedding was a completely fabricated stunt, designed entirely to boost TV ratings and secure a massive paycheck from VH1. But the reality behind the missing signature wasn't a cheap reality TV trick. It was a deeply calculated, high-stakes financial chess move. When the truth finally spilled out on the radio on Christmas Eve, Mendeecees tried to spin the narrative. He admitted to the hosts that there was no marriage license, but he claimed it was all Yandy's idea. According to him, because he was staring down a massive federal case involving severe financial fines, court-ordered restitution, and asset seizures, Yandy sat him down and gave him a piece of advice. She allegedly told him, "Let's not sign the legal papers right now. We need to protect what we're building from the courts." Mendeecees listened. He looked at his beautiful partner, heard her logical reasoning, and genuinely believed his woman was protecting their shared future. He thought she was keeping their family safe from the long arm of the federal government. But drama pages and industry insiders quickly began looking at the timeline, side by side, and they saw a completely different picture. Yandy wasn't trying to protect them. She was a highly educated business manager who knew exactly how reality TV divorces looked, and more importantly, she knew exactly what happens to a woman's hard-earned bank account when her partner gets dragged under by a federal criminal conviction. She wasn't protecting his assets from the government. She was protecting her assets, her businesses, and her rising media brand from him. While Mendeecees prepared to hand himself over to the authorities, believing he had a legally bound wife waiting at home to keep his seat warm, he actually had a brilliant business partner who had successfully isolated her finances from his legal fallout. For the next 4 years, as Mendeecees sat inside a cold federal prison cell, counting down the days, he comforted himself with the thought of the woman who wore his ring on national television. He had no idea that back in New York, the empire she was building had only one name on the deeds. And when he finally walked out of those prison gates in 2020, ready to reclaim his throne as the man of the house, he was walking straight into a trap that had been set a decade prior. A trap that was about to spring open with a scandalous trip across the Atlantic Ocean. When Mendeecees finally walked out of that federal prison cell in 2020, he felt like a king returning to his kingdom. He had done his time, paid his debt to society, and he had a beautiful, fiercely loyal woman waiting for him at the gates. The media praised Yandy as the gold standard of loyalty. To reward her and re-cement their bond, they decided to do it all over again. They threw a second, intimate ceremony to celebrate his freedom. Once again, the cameras captured the love, the tears, and the renewed promises. But just like the grand spectacle of 2015, this second ceremony was a ghost. When the music stopped and the guests left, the marriage certificate remained blank. No signatures, no legal filings, no binding ties. Mendeecees reportedly thought they were still just playing defense against the lingering financial shadows of his past legal battles. He truly believed they were an unbreakable team. But by late 2024, the heavy reality of living a double life on camera began to fracture the foundation. Quietly, without making a single announcement to the press, the couple separated. They were living apart, handling their own affairs, but maintaining a united front for the public and their ongoing media contracts. Then came 2025, the year the universe decided to pull back the curtain and let every single secret come spilling out into the light. The first major fracture didn't come from a glamorous red carpet event or a high-profile interview. It started in May 2025 on Instagram, courtesy of someone who knew Yandy's deepest, darkest secrets, her former celebrity hairstylist and longtime close friend, Bryant Jameson. In a series of explosive, unfiltered Instagram posts, Bryant completely went off on Yandy, dropping a bombshell that left the internet absolutely paralyzed. He openly accused Yandy of brutally cheating on Mendeecees, but he didn't just throw out a vague accusation. He brought receipts, names, and exact locations. Bryant claimed that Yandy had taken him on a lavish trip over to London to celebrate his birthday. It looked like a generous, sweet gesture from a wealthy celebrity friend, but according to Bryant, the birthday trip was nothing more than an elaborate, calculated cover story. He claimed that all along, Yandy had her secret side dude hiding out in London with them. The man in question was a handsome, high-profile fitness trainer named Michael Adusei. Bryant didn't hold anything back, painting a vivid, chaotic picture of what went down behind the closed doors of their luxury London hotel. On his live streams and posts, Bryant stated, "We went to London so you can fiff your side piece." He claimed that the walls in the hotel were so thin that he was forced to lie awake all night, listening to Yandy and Michael together. He said, "The wall separated my bed and your bed. I'm listening. I can't even answer the phone with my own boyfriend because I'm forced to listen to you in this all night." The internet went wild trying to process the mental image of Yandy Smith, the ultimate symbol of a dedicated, ride-or-die wife, allegedly running around European hotels with a fitness trainer while her husband was back home in America. Bryant claimed he was completely exhausted by Yandy's messy personal life and her alleged hypocrisy. He even claimed that Yandy allowed his own boyfriend to think he was the one cheating on the trip, just to keep her own hands clean and prevent the truth from leaking to Mendeecees. As the drama escalated to a fever pitch, Michael Adusei himself jumped onto his Instagram stories. While he tried to downplay the severity of the situation, he actually ended up confirming the massive rumor. He admitted that a physical encounter between him and Yandy had indeed happened in London, though he quickly tried to save face by labeling it a one-time thing that shouldn't have been blown out of proportion. Bryant eventually deleted the devastating posts, but on the internet, nothing is ever truly deleted. Millions of fans had already taken screenshots, screen-recorded the rants, and saved the evidence. For months, Yandy stayed relatively quiet as the rumors swirled. But she knew she couldn't outrun the cameras forever. A few months later, on season 12 of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Yandy finally sat down in front of the lens to address the storm. But instead of a fierce denial, she delivered a stunning confession that shocked the fan base all over again. When asked directly if she had ever stepped outside of her relationship, she looked at the interviewer and admitted to emotional cheating. She stated, "I've definitely had an emotional connection with someone outside of my husband, and we had to deal with it." She fiercely denied that anything physical had taken place, attempting to protect what was left of her public image. But the internet wasn't buying it. Fans took her televised confession and placed it side by side with Bryant Jameson's explosive London receipts, and the math just wasn't adding up. The real burning question on everyone's lips shifted from, did she cheat, to something much deeper. Why was Yandy out here fighting so hard to protect Mendeecees' ego and maintain the illusion of a perfect marriage, while actively living a completely separate, single life on the side? How does a woman hold a man down through 4 grueling years of a federal prison sentence, give him a massive televised wedding, and still manage to keep a secret London exit strategy tucked firmly in her back pocket? The fans thought this London affair was the absolute peak of the drama. They had no idea that an even bigger, darker storm was brewing just around the corner. Because a few months later, a prominent media blogger was about to drop a name that would turn Mendeecees' entire world completely upside down, and it involved a woman very close to home. If the London affair was a fracture in the illusion, what happened next was a total nuclear meltdown. As the final months of 2025 rolled around, The internet was already whispering about Yandy and Mendeecees' quiet separation, but the public still believed that Mendeecees was the aggrieved, heartbroken husband sitting at home while his wife explored her options across the Atlantic. That narrative was completely incinerated on December 2nd, 2025. Prominent media blogger Funky Deneva fired up a live stream, settled into his seat, and dropped a radioactive bombshell that set the entire urban entertainment world on fire. He didn't just hint at infidelity, he named a legendary R&B superstar who happened to be working very closely with Mendeecees at the time, Tamar Braxton. Earlier that year, Tamar Braxton had cast Mendeecees as her primary romantic lead in her highly anticipated short film and musical project, Heartbreak Retrograde. At the time, fans thought it was a brilliant business move. Two major reality TV veterans collaborating on a creative piece about heartbreak and healing. Funky Deneva, however, claimed that art was heavily imitating a very scandalous reality. On his live stream, Funky Deneva looked directly into the camera and detailed a wild night out that left him completely uncomfortable. He claimed he was with Tamar and Mendeecees at a high-end Ruth's Chris steakhouse, and what he witnessed under the table was far from professional. He stated, "You tell me, Tamar, if it's inappropriate or appropriate when we're sitting at Ruth's Chris and he's rubbing between your thighs." But he didn't stop there. He claimed the group later left the restaurant in an Uber, and the behavior escalated right in front of him. He alleged, "I got in my damn car and went home 'cause you was sitting on his lap in that goddamn Uber and y'all was kissing. Okay, and it made me damn uncomfortable." End quote. The stream reached a fever pitch when Funky Deneva brought up a bizarre incident regarding Tamar's physical appearance, hinting at a chaotic, private encounter that went wildly off the rails behind closed doors. He added, "Now if anybody know who happened and what happened to your damn teeth, it's Mendeecees and his best friend, 'cause they was the ones who went upstairs with you. I don't know whether they was hit from the back and ran your head through the headboard or what." The internet completely lost its mind. Within 24 hours, the backlash was so severe that Tamar Braxton herself jumped onto Instagram to issue a fierce, formal denial. She posted a scathing statement calling the entire story a fabricated, malicious lie. Reports quickly surfaced via gossip that she was actively threatening legal action for defamation. But just a few days later, in a bizarre move that only fueled the public's suspicion, Tamar completely deleted her denial post. Seeing her back down, Funky Deneva doubled down on his claims, refusing to retract a single word of his story. He maintained that he was in that car, he saw what he saw, and he wasn't going to let anyone gaslight him into silence. The timeline here is crucial, and it paints a picture of a man completely unraveling under the weight of his collapsing secrets. Funky Deneva dropped this devastating bomb on December 2nd, 2025. Exactly 23 days later, on Christmas Eve, a visibly shaken Mendeecees sat down in the studios of Streets 94.5 for his infamous morning show interview with Young Jock. He knew the walls were closing in, he knew the public knew about the separation, the London trip, and now, the radioactive rumors surrounding Tamar Braxton. So Mendeecees decided to detonate his own life on air before anyone else could do it for him. He confessed to the world that he and Yandy were completely over. He dropped the ultimate truth that they were never legally married, effectively throwing 20 years of history into the garbage disposal. He tried to frame it as a mutual financial decision from the past, but the timing told a completely different story. This wasn't a calm, calculated business announcement. This was a preemptive strike from a man whose secret life had just been exposed to the world. The very next day, December 26, Yandy Smith broke her silence, but she didn't come out with an aggressive rant or a messy live stream. Instead, she chose the path of cold, calculated silence, dropping a series of deeply cryptic, devastating posts on her Instagram feed. She wrote, "Now I finally understand the difference between people who love me, people who love to be around me, and people who love what I can do for them." In a follow-up post, she added a chilling line, "You're quieter now. I heard my business from people that I didn't tell." It was a masterclass in public relations. Without naming Mendeecees, without mentioning Tamar Braxton, and without addressing the fake marriage, Yandy let the entire world know that she was fully aware of everything that had been happening behind her back. She was telling her audience that she had been processing his betrayal in absolute silence while he was out here making a mockery of their life on the radio. To the public, it looked like the final, definitive nail in the coffin of a 20-year empire. The business partnership was dissolved, the love was gone, and the fake marriage was exposed. But as the calendar flipped into 2026, the cameras for Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta Season 13, began to roll. And what they captured was a man who suddenly realized he had just thrown away the greatest asset he ever owned, and he was about to completely crash out trying to get it back. The smoke from the December 2025 radio detonation had barely cleared when April 2026 arrived, bringing with it the premiere of Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta Season 13. If Mendeecees thought that confessing the truth on the radio on Christmas Eve would grant him a clean slate or a dignified exit, he was completely wrong. The raw television footage revealed a man trapped in a downward spiral of immense regret, executing what the internet quickly labeled a total, unhinged crash-out to win his non-wife back. For 20 years, Mendeecees had walked through the world with the absolute certainty that no matter what he did, no matter how long he was away in a federal facility, and no matter what rumors surfaced, Yandy Smith would be right there. She was his rock, his business manager, and the architect of his public redemption. But now, looking across the room at a woman who had completely locked him out of her life, her heart, and her bank accounts, the terrifying reality of his new existence finally set in. The cameras caught every single agonizing moment of his desperation. In a series of highly emotional, tense scenes, Mendeecees completely dropped the tough guy street exterior he had maintained for decades. He looked visibly broken, his voice cracking with a mixture of raw pain and wounded ego. In one of the season's most dramatic confrontations, he tried to appeal to their shared history, begging Yandy to remember the bond they forged before the fame took over. He looked at her and pleaded, "We was friends before we became anything. We fell in love. How do two people that love each other, and the woman I love more than anyone on this earth was becoming my enemy, because I don't know how to deal with my hurt. She doesn't know how to deal with her hurt. How do two people supposed to love each other keep hurting each other?" It was a staggering display of public vulnerability, but to the viewers at home, it felt incredibly manipulative. For years, Yandy had swallowed her own hurt, protected his reputation, and managed his public image while he was dealing with the federal government. But the moment the power dynamic shifted, the moment Yandy checked out emotionally and took total control of her narrative, Mendeecees suddenly didn't know how to handle the pain. As the season progressed, his desperation only amplified. He began leaning heavily on his castmates, searching for any possible backdoor strategy to force his way back into Yandy's good graces. In a deeply private, somber sit-down with his co-star Scrappy, Mendeecees looked like a shadow of his former self. He confessed just how empty his world had become without her presence guiding him. He told Scrappy, "I do miss my friend. I just want to do something special so we can get our friendship back." He wasn't just talking about a romantic partner. He was mourning the loss of his ultimate ally. He wanted to orchestrate some grand, romantic gesture, a classic reality TV move to sweep her off her feet and reset the board. But Yandy Smith Harris was entirely done playing her assigned role in his script. In separate scenes, sitting down with her close confidant, Kendra, Yandy showed the world what a woman looks like when she has completely processed her grief and moved into a space of total detachment. When Kendra asked her about Mendeecees' sudden, aggressive romantic advances and his frantic attempts to buy his way back into her life, Yandy didn't smile. She didn't look flattered. She looked exhausted. She calmly told Kendra that she was highly skeptical of his sudden change of heart, stating she wasn't sure how to take his advances after everything that had transpired behind closed doors. Online urban gossip forums and social media commentators began dissecting his behavior with brutal accuracy. The consensus across the internet was loud and unanimous. Mendeecees Harris had realized far too late that the grass outside of his 20-year relationship wasn't greener, it was completely barren. He had spent months playing dangerous games, dipping his toes into scandalous waters with high-profile women and letting his ego run wild. But the moment he stepped outside the protective perimeter that Yandy had built around him, he realized that he was completely exposed. He realized too late that Yandy Smith was the absolute best thing that was ever going to happen to him. She wasn't just the mother of his children or a beautiful woman on his arm. She was the structural foundation of his entire adult life. She was the brilliant business mind that turned a convicted street figure into a viable mainstream television brand. She was the woman with the high-level industry connections, the corporate relationships, and the entertainment empire that he had comfortably leveraged for 2 decades to keep himself relevant and wealthy. Without her, he wasn't a reality TV kingpin. He was just a guy with a complicated past, a blank marriage certificate, and a reputation in tatters. On that very same Christmas Eve radio interview, where he had initially tried to sound detached, a rare moment of genuine reflection had broken through his defensive armor. He had looked at the hosts and openly admitted that Yandy had entirely rewritten the trajectory of his life. He confessed that she changed who he was at his core, stating plainly that he wouldn't be the man he is today if it wasn't for her guidance, and that is what made his 2026 meltdown so deeply tragic to watch. He wasn't screaming at her, he wasn't dragging her name through the mud on blogs, and he wasn't attempting to launch a public smear campaign. He was actively mourning a woman he completely failed to appreciate until she had already completely walked out the door. He was a man standing in the wreckage of a house he helped burn down, desperately trying to catch the ashes. But as the final episodes of the season approached, a chilling realization began to dawn on the audience. If Yandy was this brilliant, Howard-educated businesswoman who kept her finances entirely separated from day one, did she actually see this exact ending coming 20 years ago? Was this entire 2-decade relationship a beautifully executed financial investment for her, or was she just a heartbroken woman who finally ran out of reasons to stay? As the curtains began to close on the explosive 2026 season of Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, the public conversation shifted from standard reality TV gossip into a deep, fascinating breakdown of high-stakes financial strategy. The world was no longer just looking at a broken relationship, they were looking at a masterclass in asset protection. The ultimate question that left every business manager and entertainment lawyer stunned was simple. Did Yandy Smith see this exact day coming all the way back in 2015, or did she just play the most brilliant game of defensive chess in the history of reality television? To understand the sheer genius of Yandy's position in 2026, you have to look at what normally happens when a high-profile reality TV couple decides to call it quits. In a standard celebrity breakup, the courtrooms become a bloody battlefield. There are brutal fights over marital assets, grueling depositions regarding hidden bank accounts, intense arguments over who gets the deeds to the luxury mansions, and massive, ongoing alimony payouts that can drain a person's wealth for decades. A messy divorce can completely dismantle a media empire that took 20 years to build. But because Yandy Smith never signed that single piece of paper, there was no courtroom battlefield. There were no joint marital assets to split down the middle. There was no legal mechanism for Mendeecees to claim a single percentage of her businesses, her production credits, her real estate holdings, or her branding contracts. Every single check Yandy signed, every company she registered under the Smith name, and every property she acquired while Mendeecees was sitting in a federal cell, belonged exclusively to her. When Mendeecees sat on the radio on Christmas Eve and tried to tell the world that the fake marriage was a joint decision to protect him from the courts, he unintentionally revealed just how deeply he had been outmaneuvered. In his mind, they were a unified team playing a defensive strategy against the federal government's fines and restitution fees. He thought they were keeping the money in the family, but Yandy, with her sharp Howard University business degree, understood a fundamental truth about the entertainment industry. A man facing a major federal conspiracy charge isn't just an emotional liability, he is a catastrophic financial risk. If she had legally tied her life to him in 2015, the federal government wouldn't just have looked at Mendeecees' personal bank accounts. They would have had the legal authority to audit her businesses, seize joint assets, freeze her production paychecks, and potentially drag her entire rising media empire into his criminal case. By refusing to sign that marriage license, Yandy didn't just build a wall between her husband and the courts. She built an absolute, impenetrable fortress between her hard-earned money and his legal chaos. For 20 years, she allowed him to live the lifestyle. She allowed him to stand next to her on the red carpets, share the luxury mansions, and play the role of the proud patriarch on national television. She gave him the public prestige of being a married man, which allowed him to successfully rebrand himself after prison and secure lucrative contracts as a media personality. She protected his ego, and she protected his public image, but she never, for one single second, let him touch the steering wheel of her financial future. As insiders began to look at the timeline of her secret London exit strategy and her emotional detachment in late 2024, the true depth of her patience became clear. Yandy didn't just walk away the moment things got tough. She treated her 20-year relationship like a long-term corporate investment. She put in the time, she built the narrative, she maximum leveraged the TV contracts, and she ensured that her children were fully provided for. She stayed until she had extracted every single ounce of value from the public power couple brand. And the moment that brand became more toxic than profitable, the moment the rumors surrounding Tamar Braxton and the public embarrassment outweighed the benefits, she simply stepped out of the structure, leaving Mendeecees standing entirely alone inside a ghost house. In the end, Mendeecees was left with nothing but a devastating realization. He had spent 2 decades believing he was a kingpin, a street-smart figure who knew how to navigate the toughest situations. But in the quiet aftermath of their 2026 split, he had to face the cold truth. He had been completely out-educated, out-strategized, and outplayed by a woman who saw through his illusion from day one. She held him down through the darkest storm of his life. She wore his ring in front of millions of screaming fans, and she gave him every opportunity to be the man he claimed to be. But she kept her exit strategy locked in her back pocket the entire time. And when the illusion finally shattered, she didn't lose a single dime. She just walked away with her empire completely intact, leaving the world to wonder if she ever truly loved the man, or if she was just managing a 20-year asset that finally stopped paying dividends. This entire 20-year saga leaves us with one burning question that is completely dividing the internet right now. Did Yandy Smith Harris play the ultimate game of financial chess from day one? Or did she genuinely want a real marriage, but realized far too late that she was dealing with a liability? Think about it. On one side, you have a brilliant, Howard-educated businesswoman who kept her brand, her money, and her assets entirely isolated for 2 decades. To some fans, she is an absolute genius, a woman who saw the legal and financial storms coming, refused to let a man pull her under, and successfully protected her kids and her empire. She gave him loyalty, but she kept her logic. But on the other side, critics are calling it the ultimate cold-blooded business move. They argue that she leveraged a 20-year relationship, a 4-year prison bid, and a massive televised wedding purely for reality TV ratings, paychecks, and public sympathy, all while keeping a permanent exit strategy tucked away in her back pocket. And then there's Mendeecees, a man who sat in a federal cell for 4 years, believing he had a wife at home, only to come back to a blank marriage certificate, an emotional cheating confession on camera, and a public fallout that left him crashing out in front of the world in 2026. Did he get exactly what he deserved for his alleged double life and those wild rumors with Tamar Braxton? Or was he completely out-educated and outmaneuvered by a partner he trusted with his life? Now I want to hear from you. Was Yandy a brilliant mastermind protecting her future, or did she play Mendeecees for 20 years? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know whose side you're on. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the collapse of reality TV's biggest illusion, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.